Welcome back to Time for Heroes podcast. This week's guest is Billy Vitch. Billy Vitch is a live music photographer and he's also running his own online music magazine. Billy's based in Liverpool and we spoke about his life growing up and adoption in an early life of crime before he turned his life around. We spoke about all of that and obviously he picked his 4 heroes to come for dinner. I hope you all enjoy the podcast and I'll be back soon with another episode. Thanks. Thank you for coming on the podcast, Billy Vitch.
Thank you.
Photographer and writer, amongst other things. We'll get on to it. We'll touch on all your work that you're into at the moment. But I like to go back to the start and kind of where you grew up, how you came to be in the industry that you're in. So just kind of tell us a bit about how life was for you growing up.
Yeah, it's quite a complex one, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? Because I was raised in the care system primarily. So I was born in 1980. My mother was from Hartlepool. She was Scottish descendant. They were all like Yorkshire mining family. Mm-hmm. She was like 11 of 10. Horrific poverty they were experiencing growing up. And most of the kids from my mother's side all ended up in care. My mum ended up in London. And via London, she ended up in Nottingham. So I think she might have been about 21. And I was born to my father's Jamaican. His name's Owen Bruce Reed. He's an okay guy. We're in touch now, but basically, through my mum's hectic lifestyle, I don't have much knowledge of it. But I ended up in the care system. She ended up in prison. Right. For a lot, I think it was a lot of petty stuff for my mum. I think she was a product of her environment, growing up in the care system herself. Mm-hmm. And I think the lifestyle, she was just probably trying to survive. Involved with petty crime and stuff. So I was born around that time when I was about 18 months old, when she first went to prison. I was still with her. I had a little brother who was born. So Lee was born 1981, April. So there's 14 months between me and him. And after being put around a few foster parents, we got adopted pretty quickly together, me and my brother. By a family from Liverpool, a husband and wife from Liverpool who were quite young. I think they were like 27. And they were a white family. Me and my brother, were both mixed heritage, Jamaican, British. But we're very, very dark, considering that we're actually half. Do you know what I mean? Like I've done one of those genealogy things recently. I've come back like 37% Scottish. Do you know what I mean? Because my biological family's name's Reed,
right?
And through looking through genealogy things, Reed was 2 brothers from lowland Scotland who went to Jamaica and had plantations and obviously slept with some of the slaves, and that's sort of where my Scottish heritage comes from on that side.
So, and in some way, you might be related to the Proclaimers.
Possibly. I don't think that's a bad one, though, is it? There's worse, like. Yeah. There's better as well, though. So I ended up, adopted by this family, and they were from extremely impoverished areas in Liverpool. Really working class people, and I don't know what they thought, but back then there was very little support, and I think the system was very much of the thought that if children were offered love and care, and the parents were in full-time employment, anyone could adopt any child. So, looking back now, it's very hard now for people to adopt kids that aren't the same race as them. Within Britain, they have a lot of boxes you have to tick. So if you're a white couple or a white single person and you want to adopt a black child, there has to be reasons why you want to adopt that child, and you have to prove that you're going to educate that child in their own black history and things. There's a lot of stuff that you have to be involved in regarding heritage, but back then there wasn't. So these two lovely people, they adopted me and my brother, and just I think they thought love was enough. And we moved to Southport, which is a Victorian seaside town, about 27 miles away from the city centre of Liverpool. Very affluent, but again has its own poverty issues. And for a long time, I guess we were lower working class. It was the 80s, and my father, who adopted me, was becoming quite successful. He was trained with Hoover, manufacturer of washing machines and things. But in the 80s, when you bought a washing machine, there was no one to fix it. There was no such thing as catalogs and things. So you really had to go to the distributor. So if you were trained by Hoover as an electrical engineer, you had a really stable and steady income fixing washing machines and things, because it was mainly affluent people who could afford these things. Come the beginning of the 90s, all that dynamics changed, how you could pay for goods and services, extended warranties and things, and poorer people could invest in these electrical equipment. So that kind of destroyed the market, because they weren't really valuable items anymore. So to service them wasn't really a well-paid job. So we went from living in like a 4-bedroom Victorian house, probably now on the market for 350k or something. That's the equivalent today to living in a 2-bedroom flat. That's how we dropped. So, through all that, there's been attempts through the years to diagnose me with ADHD and things. But as a child, there wasn't really any. They weren't diagnosing it then. So I was just seen as a naughty child. My behaviour, when I talk naughty, I wasn't kind of. It's hard to. I wasn't bad. I think there's not a correlation between naughty and bad. They can be two different things. So mischievous, inquisitive, not understanding boundaries. No, the word no. So they got me in a lot of trouble. And then being in this town, this Victorian seaside town at the time, there was probably 8 black people in a town with a population of maybe 150,000 people then. There might have been more, but from, I remember it was a rarity, so everyone knew the black family. So there was the Neblets, and there was the Collins, and then there was the Barclays, and that was spread throughout the town. Now, I wasn't from one of these black families, but that's how very few black people you had. And like racism wasn't really, it didn't really come into it. I didn't experience much racism until I got to my teens. And that's sort of another story. So leading up to that, all these behavioural problems were going on. And it became unmanageable for my parents. They didn't know what to do with me. Social services came up with all these wonderful ideas of putting me in residential schools. Now, remember at the time, like, we called them naughty boys schools. That's how they were sort of labelled throughout society. And, although they would have been classed as reform schools, maybe, terminology-wise, it was normal just to say it was a naughty boys school. Now, looking back, that's setting a child up for failure, that, isn't it? Letting them believe that he's going to a naughty boys school. And that's where things massively shifted, because I went from having quite a reasonable, apart from the very early years of my life, so this happened when I was about 10. I got put in my first residential. I was adopted when I was 2. So, between 2 and 10, there'd been a massive period of stability within quite a, we weren't suffering abject poverty. We didn't have a lot, but, it was a nice way, like probably the happiest years, do you know what I mean? So when I got put in these residential schools, I'm being put in these schools now with kids who are coming from extreme trauma, from inner cities like Birmingham, Manchester, Liverpool. And these kids are coming from backgrounds where mum and dad are heroin addicts. Mum's a prostitute, dad's an armed robber. Some of these kids have witnessed murders. So I'm getting this little naughty boy thrown in with children who are experiencing, catastrophic trauma. I don't know. Like I had to grow up quickly. Do you know what I mean? Like, so the first one I went to was a place called Shotton Hall, and that was in Shrewsbury in Shropshire. I remember being dropped off by my parents and everything. And when we got to this school, we were told we were allowed to smoke with parents' consent. We were given pocket money. We were dropped off in the town centre on a Friday and Saturday, and we were allowed to go to like the teen scene nightclubs. They had a car racing track where they bought us a Datsun Sunny, an old Datsun Sunny. They put a roll cage in it and taught us how to drive. We had this was all in my doorstep. On this, it was a converted stately home. That's the building we were living in. So we had that. We were going mountain climbing every weekend, rock climbing, caving, canoeing. So, and between that, being able to do anything I wanted, so I became quite feral. It suited me in that time, but that it was a hotbed of abuse at the same time. Physical, mental, sexual, and I don't think I questioned any of it at the time. It was just, I learned very, very young. I remember the first night, it was one of the first nights, and I'd been in the classroom with this other boy, and he was a Scouse kid, and I can't remember what the argument was, but there'd been an argument between me and him. And he was a lot smaller than me. I'm like 6'2" now, but I was probably about 5'10" then, and he was probably about 5 foot. Mickey, his name was, and nothing got said. The fight got split up in the classroom, and I was like, that's over with. And that had sort of been my experience of fighting up until then. The adults split it up, and that was it, kind of thing. Nothing really went down. And then I was in bed late that night, and I shared a room with 3 other children. Charlie, Richard, and the kid we called Peck because he was small. It's a terrible thing to call him, but kids are quite evil, aren't we? And the door opened, and this kid Mickey come in, and I'm lying in bed, and he's run over, he's punched me in the nose, and my nose has exploded. And I remember lying there crying, and I remember like the bewilderment because the other 3 children in the room didn't even try and help or do anything. Right. And I was like, whoa, where am I? What is this? Do you know what I mean? I hadn't experienced, I'd never been hit before. I'd never experienced anything like that. And it was that shock of, I think, always feeling really protected to actually being in a situation where that protection is completely and utterly gone. It didn't happen in several stages. It literally, as soon as I walked into that school, that protection, that went.
Vulnerable.
Yeah, because there was all that naivety, wasn't there? Do you know what I mean? I didn't, so that became a hotbed of physical violence, and I learned pretty early on that the way to get through that was to attack first. That's pretty much what it was. Do you know what I mean? So, and you're talking attack first from the slightest thing. Someone walks in front of you in the queue, hit them with your plate, like literally. That's the way you're going in. Do you know what I mean? Because the adults were always close by, and you sort of knew that anything like that, there'd be a situation called restraining where adults are taught. Now it's a lot safer, but they were taught ways of how to subdue a child that was being violent or, kicking off or whatever. And, it was very, I class it as child abuse now when I look back at what the adults done to us as far as that, it was techniques where you would feel your arm was being broken, but it wasn't being broken. Right. Quite insidious techniques, do you know what I mean? Because it was...
Yeah, I mean, bear in mind that these are children at the end of the day. So like,
Do you know what I mean? Like, I've never come into a situation in my life as a 41-year-old man where I felt that I had to physically attack a child for their own safety or for my safety. I've never come into a situation where back then that was just every day.
yeah.
You know, you told a member of staff to fuck off. Sorry about swearing, by the way.
No,
You would get
fine.
that would happen, you know, and it became a form of, you know, I think a lot of staff used it as a way to be violent without being violent, if that makes any sense. It was sort of like, by restraining the child, you were staying within the boundaries of what was acceptable back then. So, you know, if I told a member of staff to F off, he was quite within his rights to punch me in the side of the head, jump on me with 22 stone man, put my arms up my back, and, you know, and that was seemed as acceptable to restrain a child. Do you know what I mean?
That's disgusting, isn't it?
It is messed up when you think about it, isn't it? Like, you know what I mean? And, like, I never knew that was abuse, mate. Like, it was only in my 30s when I sat down and sort of had some counselling that someone was like, "You've been abused," you know. And I'm like, "What are you on about?" You know, so I went through several of these schools where this was the norm. Do you know what I mean? The sexual stuff was very mild. It was all suggestive stuff. You know, adults talking to me about masturbation and things and stuff that there and then I wouldn't have. It wasn't outright nonsense. Do you know what I mean? Where, like, you know what I mean? So, like, it was the subtleties of predators, I guess.
Yeah, but
you know,
is that them then? I'd imagine that's them sussing you out.
yeah,
Who they
yeah,
target.
yeah. So I really avoided a lot of the sexual stuff because I was pretty explosive, you know. And now as an adult, you know that they go for the quiet ones, and you know, so that there was a lot of that going on. But you know, there was a lot of it going on from other kids as well. So at one point, it must have been about 1992, and one day, I can't remember how it happened because there must have been 350 kids, but we all ended up being sent home to our parents because we used to go home every fortnight for a weekend. We were allowed to go home every fortnight for a weekend. And we all got sent home, and it turned into this big police investigation. Now, looking back now, it turned out that it was the Welsh Children's Home child abuse scandal.
Right.
That's what this was part of. So this was one of the homes that was investigated. Now, it's a really famous thing, and it's called a scandal because Thatcher basically shut it down mid-investigation. It's the dossier that Theresa May lost. It's that. This is the same one.
Right.
You know, and I think there was about 120 homes being investigated. But this was the thing around the child abuse where I didn't get my head around it, was because when the police were coming to interview me, they never once asked me about physical abuse. So it was just so even then, the police in the 80s and 90s didn't see children being punched and kicked and bitten by adults as abuse. You know, so they were only asking about the sexual stuff. Do you know what I mean? So it never registered with me that I was being abused. I never even even at that point, I never went, oh shit, where other kids at the school realised they'd been abused because they were talking about the sexual stuff. They never raised the physical. So when they asked me the questions, and all my answers were no, because what I was going through wasn't what you were asking. I'm 10 years old, 12 years old, so I'm just answering yes or no to what you're asking me. And they never asked me, have you been hit? Have you felt scared? Have you been beaten up? So it's just that, you know. So
the police would have knew what they were doing as well. They would have knew to keep stuff like that out there, just to kind of save herself a bit of work. I mean, a lot of your high-ranking police would be involved in this sort of abuse as well, and your government officials. So that's why.
Well, it would have been catastrophic for them, wouldn't it? If they'd have investigated, if they'd have said, you know what I mean, like you said, if they'd asked the real questions, like no one would have come out of it alive as far as the higher ups. You know what I mean? But I think the irony of that is like even the public perception was not really aware of, or not. I wouldn't say not aware. I think we were still coming out of a time in history where it is still quite appropriate to abuse children in the form of physical as a learning, as a tool to teach people, teach kids discipline. I think what I mean. So it's still very normal.
I mean, I'm the same age as you. I can mind at school, primary 1 and primary 2. The teacher we had, she wouldn't let you go. Bear in mind, you're 5 and 6 year old, and she wouldn't let you go to the toilet and things like that. I mean, I can mind peeing myself like 2 or 3 times because I was scared to ask to go to the toilet and things like that. And she used to, she had a guitar. She used to pretend she was teaching music, but see, if you were bad, she would hit you with the arm of the guitar, the neck of the guitar. So there was stuff like that going on in schools, and this is it. But what you're saying, like public perception as well. Again, I'm saying the police were involved and the government were involved, but the media would have been involved as well.
Yeah, of course. You look at the BBC and the Jimmy Savile stuff. We know how deep, and even the accusations with Cliff Richard that his name's in. We only have to look at the royal family right now, and do you know what I'm saying? Like our monarchy are involved in child abuse. Do you know what I mean? This is the world that where. And someone was talking about this the other day. I think it was my daughter-in-law. She was saying about, do you know why like loads of paedophiles are like multi-billionaires? It's because they get to a stage where they can't experience anything else because they have all the money. So everything else becomes more taboo. So that's why you tend to find a lot of wealthier people who have access to most of the things in life that we wouldn't. You find a massive degree of paedophiles within that area because I'm not saying this is why. It was just a discussion we were having because it's the next taboo. It's the next, well, I can have anything else I want. But that's another conversation for another day, isn't it? Because it just goes so deep.
But it makes sense.
Like you said, but like you said about, even you being stopped to go to the toilet, it was like, this was also normal for like the majority of children within the UK, even on lower levels to my abuse, kids, it was just normal.
Yeah.
And parents kind of didn't even, I think a lot of parents were scared to question it. I think they just accepted the status quo of life.
Yeah, I mean, that incident that I was telling you about, I mean, there was another, used to be, you put your hands up in the morning for packed lunches, how many people were staying for packed lunch or school dinners, and if there was too many people, if too many hands went up, she would start shouting at people and say that, do your parents not care about you, they don't make these lunches and things like that. And I can mind one day, because my dad worked night shift and my mum, she worked during the day. So I was watching the hands going up and I thought there's too many hands. Yeah. So I kept my hand down and I'd take it home. I walked home at lunchtime with my pal, but I couldn't get in because I didn't have any way to get in. My dad was sleeping. I didn't want to let him know. So I sat out in the step and my next door neighbour phoned my big sister, and my big sister dragged me back down to the school and she went right through them. But my parents, they done nothing about it. They didn't want to rock the boat. So
I think that's what it is. I think we had a thing where that thing in the 80s, I was saying about my dad's work, where there was a degree of comfortability compared to the abject poverty that he'd experienced after the war, being a war baby. And I think a lot of people just kept their mouth shut because we were like, we've been, this is okay, this, compared to what we've lived in before. You rock the boat. And I think as well, a lot of people trusted the establishment. I think they trust why. I find, especially with the voting public, we still have a generation of people from that generation who still can't fathom that a government would harm them or do bad to them or not to be trusted. Like, And I get it. I understand it, because I think a lot of people can't fathom, why would they do that to us? We haven't done anything wrong. We're good people. They wouldn't treat us like that, would they? So I think you get a lot of that coming from that generation, but it's the same generation of, the dads that didn't talk, the dads that didn't cry. We don't talk about feelings. The stiff upper lip. We were then where, me and you growing up in that period. We're living with parents who experienced that. Have you ever heard of a poet called Philip Larkin?
Yeah.
This be the verse.
Mm-hmm.
Right, I'll send it to you later, but it starts, "They F you up, your mum and dad. They did not mean to. They were effed up themselves by parents," and something about flat hats. But it's talking about how parents from that generation pass on misery unintentionally.
Yeah, well, yeah, I would get that, because I think now, like, kind of our generation and onwards are kind of trying to fight back and trying to make things right, but it'll take generations to kind of equal the scores.
I think the generation of kids that we have growing up now, up until the early, from kids to 19, 20, fortunately I get to experience a lot of these kids within the work that I'm doing, because it's music and venues, and they feel like the kids who are going to make the change to me. I feel these are the kids who are going to change the country and change the world. They're the kids that they don't care about the color of your skin, what you look like, if you're trans, if you're gay, if you're straight, if you're bi. They're the kids who care about a stranger. They're just the kids that I can be proud of. Do you know what I mean? I find this in, and obviously there's a lot of disillusionment with, younger generations, and there's a lot of violence on the streets, but I find there is a generation of children at the moment really coming through as really empathetic, strong, individuals. So yeah, where were we up to? We were up to the abuse, weren't we? So
yeah,
I went through 3 of those schools, 4 of them, and every single one of them, was an investigation in every single one. The first one was the Welsh Children's Homes, and the second 3 weren't, but they were still massive investigations, and they were in the northwest of England, and they're both open now. The first one isn't, but the last 2, both Catholic. They're run by a big Catholic organisation that I won't name, and they've been through several scandals, and they come out the other end. That's just another ballpark. So, like, I think between the first and the last one, the violence seemed. It was me. Although the first one was where the violence started, it was the happiest I was throughout the whole period, and it was the last one that was the scariest, because the last one, I'm 13 at the time, and I'm a gobby little. I've got a mouth on me. Do you know what I mean? I basically got kicked out of 4 residential schools eventually. Now, I wore that as a badge of honor, like, to be sent to a naughty boys' school, right? And they kick you out of a naughty boys' school, mate. Because when I was coming home at weekends to Southport, all the other lads looked up to me, because it was like, he gets kicked out of schools, him. And the girls thought it was hot, and it was a badge of honor. Do you know what I mean? But the last one was the most brutal, because that was just, there was no rhyme or reason for the violence there from adults. There was a guy called, I can't mention his name, but he was a rugby player for St. Helens part-time. And I remember fighting with my roommate. I'm 13. I've come out, I'm 13. I'm probably 5'5", maybe 8 stone, maybe 7.5 stone. And I remember coming out of my bedroom, and he runs up. This guy had to be 21 stone and like 6'1" or something. I remember he hit me at the bathroom door, and I landed in the bath. He hit me that hard. Yeah, and I always felt.
There's just absolutely no need in it. I mean, that's not even restraining. Then that's just rattling somebody for the sake of it.
But then when I look back on it as well, I have to look back on it and think maybe there was possibly degrees of racism with some of it as well. Do you know what I mean? You know,
Yeah.
which is something I've not even thought about. But there's a possibility of that, because this guy it was leading up to that moment. Like he waited a long time to get me on my own.
Yeah.
And I know that there'd been instances before, do you know what I mean, where he couldn't do anything, do you know what I mean? But there was never no reason for him to dislike me. So so I got kicked out of the mall and I went back home to my poor parents.
Did you just go back to live up to Southport?
To Southport, I went back to my poor parents, and you know, we grew up in Southport at the time. We grew up basically, Southport now is classed as Merseyside. That's where it's under the borough of Merseyside. But back then it was Lancashire, and it's a really proud Lancasterian town as well, really proud. So they still maintain personally this Lancaster vibe, and we lived in this little village called Crosslands, and it was magical. So at this age, 13, I've gone back. Mum and Dad can't deal with me. My black friend Elliot Collins from Barbados, his mum and dad say to my mum and dad, "Listen, we'll foster Billy, and he can come and live with us." My mum and dad have just gone, "Yeah." And I went to live with them, and I think I was with them from 13 to 15. And again, the freedom they offered me had been completely insane compared to what I'd always gone, because I'd been quite restricted with my parents. It was back home at 8:00 at night, but you were kicked out of the house at 8 in the morning. But you know, within 2 weeks of being with the Collinses, they were a mixed Bayesian family, and just the love you felt in the house. It wasn't what I'd never felt, this kind of energy or love or passion or culture identity or anything compared to what I was experiencing with this family and the freedom I was given. But you know, I ran wild with it and abused it.
What was
because
what was happening with your brother at this time? Like, was your brother in there?
He was still with them. And his experience was very different to mine. Although later on in life, he ended up very much mirroring everything that I did, you know, and becoming, you know, a young criminal and things, and involved in street crime and stuff. And I think there was definitely a part of, he was academically very clever, where I was artistically clever. So my art, it was never nurtured with me. Where, because we're talking about of the time again as well, aren't we? Where to be academically clever is PC, it's normal. That's all, you know. So he's getting all the bells and whistles, isn't he? But it wasn't enough, I don't think, because I don't think either of us, even with the family who adopted us, I don't think they were capable of love. I honestly believe that. I think they were capable of the idea of love, but they're not capable of. And I find they're just kids of that generation. You know, I think they thought, it's like, you know, the people who they get a dog at Christmas, and then the dog starts pissing all over the couches, and it's like, all of a sudden, what do we do with this dog? Because that is not what we bought. It's very much what that situation was. And I don't hold any malice towards them. I don't. I get it. I get that they're part of the generation that they came from, and you know, some people are deeper thinkers, some people aren't deep thinkers. I don't think they've been able to think that deep. But then I'm also aware as well that I might be blaming them for things that have become part of my reality that maybe might have been part of my imagination as well, because it's been 20 odd years. Do you know what I mean? So I don't hold much. You know, I'm thankful that they gave me the opportunity. It would have been nice if it had gone different. So my brother was still with them. And what we both found is they'd never been able to have children. Right. But when I was about 9, my mum got pregnant and had our sister, our Joanne, and the whole dynamics, it just completely so like you could have Christmas, right, and you get like a little CD player, and she'd get like a Wendy house in the back garden, and a bike and a rocking horse, and you'd just be sat there going like, this just doesn't add up, even at like 9. Like, why is she getting up? Do you know what I mean?
Mate, I've heard this story with another guy. I'll pass him on to you after.
Really? Yeah,
I'll
man.
pass him on to you after the podcast. It'd be good for your interview as well, but kind of the same sort of story and the same sort of upbringing.
It's bizarre because, like, you try and make excuses for them, and that goes on for 40 years.
Yeah.
You know, until
you wake up really and kind of realise what's going on in it, and it's all the problems are locked up in your head, and it's only you that can.
Yeah, because you know it's like, you know, I'm waking up to it now, but that's took a tremendous amount of pain to experience to get to that stage, and now I'm very but you know, I said before, I don't feel any bad feelings towards them. I do. I'm extremely fucking angry because I don't feel bad experiences for the choices they made. I can accept that they made them. It's the behaviour since.
Yeah.
Because in my head, right, it's like anyone could have adopted me, yeah. Do you know what I mean? But you adopted me and rejected me. It's like, if you'd have left me alone, mate, things might have been better with someone else. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah, totally.
You know, so it takes a long time to wake up to that.
Yeah.
But then the thing is as well, that, you know, it's that waking up to it, and also, I think the only constructive way to do it is to do it in an unblaming way, because if you sit there blaming people,
then you'll carry that hate round with you for.
Yeah. So you know what I'm trying to do at the moment, along with therapy and stuff, is to try and deconstruct it and to see the reality of it, of why people act this way and why these things sometimes happen, and that people aren't to blame, and that most people at any given time are trying to do the best that they can in any given situation, and a lot of us get it wrong. And I think that goes on, and I'm not doing that for them. I'm doing it for me because it gives me freedom then.
Yeah, quite right.
So I ended up with this family. I think the thing is I wasn't really going to get this deep with it, but it's like, I've never told the story, and I think we do everyone a disservice not.
Yeah.
Because there's other people out there, like that guy you mentioned, who've experienced this kind of thing, and if it helps someone else.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you're comfortable talking, I mean, I'm quite happy.
Yeah.
With whatever.
Yeah. It gets better. Do you know what I mean? But I think that's the focus for me. You know, if it helps someone else who's just sat at home like that, who's been through that, and they can realize from this that they're not to blame. Do you know what I mean? That's enough in it. You know, I think that's one kind of commitment I made to myself with the music and all the stuff, was all the damage that was done. If I just sat there and let it destroy me, they all win.
Yeah.
But so you change the game.
I mean, pushing on and like to into your 40s, and you're kind of achieving something with your life. So
yeah,
done something, which we'll get into.
How long
you moved in with this family?
Right, so I moved in with this family, and it was just magic. It was great, amazing, the love, and I just messed it up. I'm messed it up. So me and my friend Elliot, whose mum and dad got us, some lads approached us with a big bag of ecstasy and said, "Can you sell some of these?" And we're like, "Yeah, we can." And I'd never taken drugs in my life up until that point. We must be 15 now. And I think they gave us 500. This is in like 1995.
Yeah.
We sold them in like 4 days or something. These were retailing at the time between 12 and 18 quid for a pill.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But we sold them, but we weren't paying. We weren't paying the guy. We were just, I don't know what we thought we were doing. So Christmas Eve, I think 1995. His mum and dad are on holiday in Barbados, and they've left me and Elliot, who I think Elliot's 16, I'm 15. They've left us with the house. Load of lads have come in, kicked our heads in, smashed the house up, and they've had to put me back in care. I've gone into a kid's home. I think I was there for 4 weeks, until my 16th birthday, and literally on my 16th birthday, they came to my door in the children's home and said social services have been in touch. They're not willing to basically continue funding you. There's not a care order in place. So a care order means that they have to care for a child to the age of 21. They said they're not willing to put a care order in place. So goodbye, here's the address to a bed and breakfast, and they'll pay that for 7 months until you can claim dole. Yeah, and I believe that was racist. I do believe it was racist. Not from the children's home, I believe social services. Not racist as in the fact of that people were outwardly being racist, but the fact that statistically black children end up the ones with the least care, the least funding, and the least support statistically. And that the likes of me and my brother, no one was going to question that. If you said, I'll give you an example. There was a kid that was living with Mark, who was my best friend, shares a birthday with me as well. He was able to go home and spend time with his parents. He was adopted as well. Throughout this period, he was able to go home and spend time with his parents. Yeah, he had a care order till he's 21. Even now, he still goes and stays at his parents. He was white. Me at the time wasn't able to go and stay with my parents, but they kicked me out on my 16th birthday with no care order.
It's just, again, man, it's just disgusting to teach something like that.
So that was that. From then, I had no life skills, so I just hit the streets and I was feral. I was just doing what all the other kids were doing. I moved to Liverpool, met a girl, and she became my son's mum. This is age 16. Within 6 months, I'm in prison. Get with a 3-year prison sentence for street robbery.
Right.
And it was basically, I was really drunk. And I just attacked a lad that was shouting at me on a train. I can't remember what he was shouting, but it was just, the normal, who you're looking at.
Yeah.
And I attacked him. And I remember coming off the train and there was police at the train, and I tried to hit one of the police with a bottle, and I fell over. I fell on the bottle, I ended up with loads of stitches in my leg, ended up in hospital. And then 6 months later, they gave me 3 years in prison for street robbery. I think the lad said that I'd tried to take money off him, although it hadn't been that situation. It'd just been a fight kind of thing.
Yeah, that mental again. There's no way that's 3 years in the jail for that.
It was the whole, 6 months before I was being protected by the law and the state as a vulnerable child, and 6 months later, I'm classed as a responsible adult, now put in to the prison system. And with that just created a cycle, because it was very much the same as the children's homes, that you'd got quite a vulnerable but kind of a really kind and caring lad, even though quite naughty, thrusting him again into a situation and a system that was completely ravaged by young men who were elitist criminals to a degree. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm going from, running into an off license and grabbing the 5 cans of beer to sharing a cell with a guy who strangled his mum with a PlayStation lead because she wouldn't insure him on her car. That's literally, you know what I mean? That's what, and all that done to me, it was that system again. It was very much the same as the first Kids Zone, that you just had to fight. You had to fight and fight and fight. So I got the 3 years, but even with the 3 years, I think I served. You were meant to serve half, but back then you could get extra days for bad behaviour. And I think I served in the end. I think I served 28 months or something, when I should have served 18.
Right.
And the bad behaviour, which was most frustrating about it wasn't bad behaviour. It was defending myself from attack, usually. You know, I remember watching the telly in the communal area once, and some kid had been arguing with out the window. He's come behind me, and he's put in the plugs in the sink. They used to have these big fake metal plugs, but how fat they were, steel plugs. You can pop them out with your plastic knife. And this kid's put them in a sock, sat behind me watching telly. Because of an argument out the living room, he's waited till I'm watching the telly, and he's jumped up and swung it behind me, and he's hit me there, and I've ended up with like 5-6 stitches. So I've gone to the hospital, come back from the hospital, and then when I get back, it's called nicking. I get a nicking sheet. I'm like, what I've been nicked for? And they're like, fighting. And I'm like, they watched what happened. That's what you were dealing with. So it was like, even defending yourself, you were getting.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So,
You're stuck between a rock and a hard place. It doesn't matter what you do, you're still getting.
yeah, it's impossible. You know, it's part of that generation again of, you know, the first one I went to was Stoke Heath YOI, Young Offenders Institute, you know, and this is all these buildings. So Stoke Heath, Hindley, these are in the north of Britain, Manchester and Wigan and Shropshire. They were all still the Borstal buildings. Nothing had changed. They were still Borstal. They just weren't called Borstal anymore. The same buildings were the same ones that you'll see on the film Scum with Ray Winston in. The same buildings, and the patriarchy in there with the male staff was still very much Borstal, although some new different government guidelines has come out. It was still very much a very secret world that wasn't being policed too well. So it was, although it wasn't Borstal, it was very much Borstal still. This, you know, we're talking 1997.
Yeah, it's a different name. That's what it is.
Yeah, you know, and you know, one of the things that throughout all this, so this went on this prison journey through, you know, from 97 to 2011. So from the age of 17 to the age of 31, I was in jail every few months. And it was mainly alcohol related. But I'd got to a stage where my coping mechanism was alcohol.
Yeah.
To go with anxiety, I was having panic attacks. And I was living this extreme life where I was hanging on the peripheries of extreme with really big gangsters, but not being a really big gangster, but ending up in situations because it was like I was trying to climb this ladder to become this big gangster because I'd ended up in this lifestyle now where that was the ambition.
Yeah. You must have felt did you feel kind of trapped in that world? As if there's no.
I did because I wasn't made for it.
Yeah.
I wasn't made for it. You know, for some reason, I managed to maintain my humility. So I was still a very sensitive, deep and caring person, and not understanding that about myself, and then trying to be a bad man with real bad men, you know, was just terrifying because I was constantly terrified. You know, I was constantly suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. But there was so much about it that was attractive as well. I think, you know, well, it is to a lot of young men, isn't it? You know,
It's the money and the status and kind of the perception of what you look like to other people.
Do you know what I mean? But it was definitely about fitting in as more than trying to be a gangster. It was I think that's the case with most of them because, you know, what the thing I found throughout the 10 years or, you know, in and out of jail or whatever was like 90% of the kids that I'd been in kid zones with were in prison with me. Yeah. Like every time I went to a new prison, you'd just end up bumping into 5 or 6 kids that had been nonced in the bedroom next to you when you were in a kid zone. And that was like, this is when I'm starting to wake up, when I'm starting to get switched on, when I'm starting to go, what's going on? How's that even possible? You know, you're seeing the statistics that, you know, and what was happening was I was either seeing kids that had been in kids zone with commit suicide, become heroin addicts, end up in jail for a murder, or, you know, and these were all, but they were all related to childhood trauma. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But literally 90% of the kids that I was in kids home with, I bumped into in prison. And
Yeah.
that shows you the system's failing.
Yeah, but that's what it was. It was a cycle, because if there's all that abuse going on, they don't want that getting out. So they would rather you are all kind of drugged up to the
Scumbags.
eyeballs and locked up in jails so that you can't tell your story. And if you do tell your story, nobody's going to believe it, because all you are is a criminal. That's the way you'll be seen by the authorities.
I think the thing is with that, though, is if you walked into a prison today, you're going to see exactly the same thing. It hasn't changed.
Yeah.
The system is very much still the same. You know, and like, I don't know how you change that. You know, if you look at the British prison system, I can't remember the exact statistics, but it's something insane. Like 78% of people in prison suffer from addiction issues or mental health issues.
Yeah.
Over 70%.
That's
Basically,
crazy, isn't it?
what it's saying is over 70% of the people that are in prison should be in hospital.
Mm-hmm.
That's the reality. But it's, you know, it's a profitable business, incarceration to governments.
Yeah.
It's one of the biggest free labour forces in the country, do you know what I mean, in the world.
What prisons were you in? Was this all in the English prison system?
So the English prison system. So it started off, I think the first one was 1997, Lancaster Farms on remand. Then I went to Alt Course, which had just opened in Liverpool. This is all in the same sentence. Then I went to Hindley. Then I went to Stoke Heath. Then I went to Guys Marsh and Dorset. Then I went to Moorlands. I think I got out of Moorlands in Doncaster. It was 6 prisons in 28 months in that 3-year sentence one.
Yeah, it's mental.
It is, because you don't have time to. How are you meant to rehabilitate yourself when you're moving? You know, you don't have time to get on any courses, you know, any educational things, you know, to build friendships, to build stability, and, you know, or to even get a care plan together with your probation officer, you know, because you're waking up in a new prison. But again, at the time, I was one of very few prisoners who were being shifted around that much because of behaviour. And again, when I look at it, it's classic ADHD, my behaviour at the time. But it was, he's a naughty kid. But I played up to it massively because it gave me status. You know, it made me feel I was a someone, you know, when other kids are like, there's Madhead, whatever his name is, he's just been kicked out of this jail. You know, you got a bit of notoriety from it.
Right.
So, you know, so it became like a drug doing that.
So, like, see how you've been going on about the ADHD. Are you diagnosed with that now?
I'm diagnosed with bipolar disorder now, and complex post-traumatic stress disorder.
Right.
Which is related to childhood.
Medication around for that?
This is all, well, yeah, I've been on medication on and off for years, but this is all kind of like a brand new. So the bipolar one's quite a new diagnosis. Oh no, sorry, the bipolar one's a 10-year-old diagnosis. And about 3 weeks ago, I was re-diagnosed with the complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which is basically they believe that all the other diagnoses are possibly wrong. Right. And I've been suffering this post-traumatic stress disorder since childhood, and that it's all a result of childhood trauma. So I'm just about to start a new medication program with that, and then with stability, they want to start like intensive counselling and things, and so that's all of a bit of a whirlwind at the moment, because it's sort of got to a stage where like it's proven that I wasn't bad, that all my responses were directly responding to the abuse as a child. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. What?
So yeah, I went through that whole prison thing. I got out and I carried on doing the whole drinking and drugging, and you know, none of my crimes were major crimes. I was always smart enough to hang around on the periphery, and most of it was alcohol related. You know, getting into a fight with someone else and them coming off worse than me, or, you know, after the initial robbery thing, I never did anything as serious as that again, although I hung around with and extremely serious people.
Uh-huh.
I ended up moving to Ibiza when I was 25, and I was there for a year selling drugs in Ibiza, and that kind of like went extremely wrong. So then I went to Marbella to try and sort my life out, and that more or less happened exactly the same, to the stage where I was kidnapped, and I had to dig my own grave and things, and
Jesus.
that got, yeah. That's why a lot of this stuff's extreme, but then when I look at what we've been talking about, we could talk for 10 hours about it. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, but that's pretty much the scope of it. So I came back from that, and this is sort of where the journey got better. So I came back from the Ibiza thing 2005, I think, 2006, and I was in a flat in Southport, and literally it got to a stage where like every time I used to get out of prison or come back from somewhere, my mates would be there, but as you got older, there'd be a little less few mates, and then the next time you come back, and all of a sudden you're coming back, and there's not even one mate left.
Right.
And they've all settled down, and no one's letting you sleep on the couch. And I remember this girl let me use her flat, and I remember writing myself a note, and I said, "You'll live and die in this town." And it's a song by what are they bloody called now? I'll come back to the name of the band. The Enemy, yeah. Okay, yeah. Right, yeah. So that album was out at the time. What was it? What was the album called? Yeah, so it was that.
They should know it.
Was it called This Town or something like that? Was it?
Yeah, it might even be the same name as the lyrics you said.
Yeah.
We need to edit this bit.
It was an Enemy lyric. It was a song by the Enemy, and I was like, because I'd watched it happen to so many people in that town. It's the classic story of the Victorian seaside resort. All it does is have bed sits with heroin addicts and alcoholics in it.
Yeah.
So I literally got an ounce of cocaine off my mate, sold it, and moved to Liverpool into a man's hostel in 2006. So I'm like 26. There'd been a music teacher when I'd been in Walton Prison, because when I came back from Ibiza, actually, I'd ended up in Walton Prison for stealing the car. And there'd been a music teacher called Delia who said, when you get out, if you want to do music, come and see me. So I came and seen her when I got out, and she gave me a reference and got me into music college. So then I spent 3 years in music college between 2006 2009, studying music performance and music programming, like Logic and mixing and stuff like that. And basically for the next few years, just floated around in bands locally. Most of the stuff I was doing was acoustically, was my own stuff. I released, I think, about 8 singles and 1 album under my own name. But I was never really I was very much acoustic, an acoustic artist. It's a hard job to do. Look how many acoustic artists are in the charts. It's just, it's unviable. And after a long time of doing that, it sort of got to a stage where some lad I knew had a music studio, and he was like, "We've got this studio for people who suffer from addiction and mental health issues and stuff. Do you want to come down and spend some time there?" I was like, "Yeah, it's National Lottery funded." And then over a course of like 4 years or something, I ended up becoming a director of the music studio and teaching music to vulnerable adults, people in addiction, people with mental health issues. And that sort of took me up to 2016.
It just shows you how quickly, though, your life can turn.
I think, to be honest, though, it still feels pretty much messed up. But I think a lot of us maybe get it, as we grow up and we get older. I think a lot of us get to that stage where, like, if I'd have known what I know now, how prolific I could have been when I was younger.
Yeah.
Because we're figuring it out for the first 39 years.
Well, going back to that, see, the music, that album is. That's the name of that album. We'll live and die in these towns. That's the name of the album.
Yeah, right, okay. Yeah, I've still got the letter somewhere as well, you know.
So, like, what sort of music were you into? Were you always into kind of guitar-based music? What were you into when you were young? Were you even into
Like, as a
music then?
kid, my proper love for music started off when I must have been about 12. I don't know if I was younger, actually, and it was Appetite to Destruction, Enter Sandman, Metallica, and then there was like that really like Rat Pack rave scene as well. So like there was a lot of like happy hardcore stuff going on, but it was definitely, I think, you know, and Meatloaf, you know, at the time it was like Bat Out of Hell. That album had just come out, you know, and there was about 5 of us kids who were like really, really obsessive over that. But like White Snake as well, and Alice Cooper, and but that was so not normal as well for the kids I was hanging around with. Like, so I was sort of, it was the first sort of like breakout into my individuality. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But then that sort of disappeared around 15 with the rave scene and the ecstasy.
Yeah.
So it became all the drugs, all of that madness and that, and that was that pretty much until about 2002. And then it all sort of changed then with loads of mad music that I probably even wouldn't even listen to now, but some cool stuff like Newton Faulkner, The Enemy, the early Kings of Leon stuff, all the early Libertine stuff. But then even mixing that with like R&B, like Usher and things. Because for me, music had always kind of been, if a song turns me on, it turns me on. I wasn't like specifically bothered about what genre it was.
Yeah, you're just kind of here for music.
Do you know what I mean? But it's definitely rock had always kind of, it's that tribal thing. It just felt really tribal and really like Neolithic, you know, the drums and the guitars but yeah, but that you know, that would my, you know, I'd had a passion for drums and guitars from a very young age, but you could never sit me down long enough to learn these things as a kid. But then that came back through a bit of nurturing through the jail thing. So I was pretty much from like 23 to even now, you know, indie rock kind of stuff.
Right.
You know, I think I have a bit of that, especially because of the scene that I'm in. Is like I fall for a lot of mainstream stuff. I do. Like you know, I'm not like, you know, when people talk about these dead, like deep iconic songs from these really obscure bands, I'm just like, it goes over my head. I'm like, I listen to Kings of Leon, or Manic Street Preachers. Do you know what I mean? It's
the
Manics were pretty massive.
I mean, you get a lot of people that they try and make it they're into the obscure bands, but I mean, I'm pretty much the same. I can go to a certain level, but some of it just some of it washes over me as well.
I think is it just because people are trying to be snobby, or do you think we're just on a different music journey?
I find that there's a certain extent to snobbiness, and then I kind of find like my pals that are in bands, or they know, they seem to know the more obscure bands, because they kind of, I don't know if they've just got an ear for the music or whatever, but I mean, some of it, like, some music's just noise at times as well, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. But doesn't it, like, for me, like, music, it all depends on what mood I'm in, where I'm at emotionally. Do you know what I mean? So, I like...
There you go.
You know, I can go listening from... So, like, the music that I get the most, like... what soothes me the most is really hard rock. Right. Really heavy rock music, you know, like Biffy Clyro or something. That's kind of music that I feel really peaceful at. But then I'll listen to like singers from the 1930s as well. Like I like Al Bowley or something. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well,
I went to see him. Go on.
I've been listening the last couple of days. I've been listening to Miles Kane. He does like,
he's a dude though.
He does a playlist on Spotify, and it's got all sorts of stuff. And the missus caught me listening to it the day, and she's like, "What the hell's that?" Like, there's like Diana Ross, and goes from Diana Ross to Kano to
that's exactly the same.
So
exactly the same.
But that's the thing. You can like music's music, can it? You can like whatever you like, and
I think like when you have a collective taste in music, like my music's a journey, you know what I mean? So if I put my playlist on, I'm going on this big journey, you know what I mean? This big epic journey. It's like why limit yourself? Do you know what I mean? Like when you can have this big massive journey with different genres, do you know what I mean? So you know what am I listening to? Some even now, like at the moment, I'm listening to a lot of Clean Cut Kid, who are like a Liverpool band. Very quite obscure. They were signed to a major, but then they walked away from the major because they found that they were really limited in what they were able to do with the major. But then I'm listening to, I've got Kanye West on there, where I only listened, the first time I listened to Kanye West was during lockdown.
Right.
So I change, you know what I mean?
Well, this is a thing as well. Lockdown's been good for just being able to kind of rediscover stuff that you might know you heard at the time. Because
it's the playlists that get you in it, like those playlists. You end up listening to stuff that you're like, I could never have ever even thought of finding that song, and all of a sudden it says, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So when did so obviously you were doing this at the recording studio. When did photography come into that?
It sort of came off the back of the recording studio because, you know, it's the recording studio. I sort of done my first album there for myself. It's still on Spotify, actually, under my birth name, because my birth name's not Billy Vitch. My birth name is Owen Reed.
Right.
But then when I was adopted, they changed it to Owen Allen. And Billy Vitch literally translates to son of Billy. A few years ago, I was doing a genealogy search, and I found that my biological family had a Polish shoe cobbler 3 generations ago, and his last name was Vitch. Vitch means son of.
Right.
The guy who adopted me is called Billy, so Billy Vitch is son of Billy. Basically, that's what it translates to. So yeah, I've done this first album, and then the album, when I look back on it, the album was literally just it was all the stuff that I built up from the age of 7. So then I didn't really have anything to write about after I'd released that album. Do you know what I mean? But although I never wrote the album with that intention, it was only after I'd written it that I was like, oh wow, you've just written about your first 35 years on the planet, haven't you, really?
Yeah.
So we were still hanging around the studio thing, and what sort of happened with the studio was we'd both, you know, my mate only really founded it because he wanted to help people, and it was getting complicated. We were having complaints from clients, just silly things like they might want to cover a song and then we wouldn't let them cover it because it was legally impossible to do a cover of, but because this person had severe mental illness or health, they couldn't understand that they weren't allowed to do it, so they'd put a complaint in against you. So we were having to struggle with all these safeguarding issues, and we were just 2 musicians trying to run a studio. We weren't prepared for it all, so in the end, we ended up folding the studio because it became unenjoyable. Do you know what I mean? So Dan, who's still a good friend who had the studio, because he had a studio, he used to get a lot of delegate passes, so press passes for venues and shows and things. And he said, this must have been like beginning of 2009, it was for Sound City in Liverpool. So Sound City is quite a famous music festival, to be honest, for the size of it.
It's a festival that goes kind of around all the different venues in Liverpool, isn't it?
It does now, yeah, but it used to be, originally it was just focused on Bramley Moor Dock,
right.
Which I preferred because it was like a real proper festival, do you know what I mean? And now it's probably over about 37 venues or something. And in all honesty, that is the best approach you could probably have because we can keep it grassroots and everyone's getting paid. But I still look at festivals and think I like a festival in one location personally.
Yeah, I mean, I've never been to anything like that. Like I think you get the one in Camden Rock, so that's the same sort of thing in it, and then there's one up here in Glasgow, Tenement Trail,
yeah.
which is the same thing. But no, I've never kind of experienced any of the things. It doesn't
It
kind of
is good. It's just a pain in the ass.
yeah,
Do you know what I mean? Because every venue you go into, imagine if you were younger, if you're a younger person, every time you go into a different venue, they want to see identification, and you got to show your tickets here and there, and
yeah,
you miss stage times a lot and things as well. And I can only imagine like what it must take to actually put that together. Do you know? It's a monumental feat, really. So it's an amazing thing for the city, but I still get the vibe that even a lot of people who go to prefer the all under one roof
yeah.
thing. That's why we have supermarkets, in it? Really, do you know what I mean? We're creatures of habit, So my mate got these tickets, and he said, "I've got photography passes to go and do this." I was like, "We're not photographers, are we?" And they're like, So we Googled it, what to do as a photographer. So we just went and bought like these little £100 cameras and thought, I used to take pretty decent pictures on my phone. It'd be sound. So you went with these little £100 cameras, and these little £100 cameras they're all right outside, but a lot of music photography is based in low light. And when I got home, the photos they were impossible to see. There was nothing you could do with them. And I was like, I've been one of those people all my life, mate, who, if you say I can't do something, it's like I see that as like a challenge. It's like who are you talking to? All right, watch what I do now. Do you know what I mean? And that was exactly the same with that situation. I was fortunate to have a little bit of money saved up, and I went round some local photographers that I knew and asked what to buy. I spent a few grand on equipment, Googled the hell out of it, and then started sending messages to local venues and local bands saying, "Can I just come and take photographs of you at your show?" And I don't think anyone ever said no. So I just focused literally. It happened really quick. I focused for about 6 months just on local bands, and then I sent some photos to a local magazine. I said, "Can I come and shoot shows for you?" And they were like, "Yeah, of course you can, but you've got to put the legwork in." And a lot of people come thinking they're going to be shooting major shows, and you can't just do it. You've got to take the rough with the smooth and do the small stuff first. And I was like, "Yeah, just the opportunity would be amazing." And I think within 6 months, I was booked to do Paul Weller or something because my photographs.
That's brilliant.
Like, I'm not even going to say I'm good, do you know what I mean? Because I think that's a bit pretentious, do you know what I mean? But whoever was looking at my photographs thought that my work was good enough. And, and so before lockdown, I think, who did I even shoot before lockdown? I've done bigger since, do you know what I mean? But before the lockdown, I think I was booked to do Kano, Paul Weller, but most of the stuff was still big local bands. And, my passion's still the big local bands, to be honest. But then during lockdown, when this had sort of taken off, I'd got to a stage where I was getting booked by local bands just because they were stealing my stuff in the magazine.
Right.
So we were starting to start making connections. And the first one was with a local band who's absolutely amazing called Rats.
Yeah, I've heard
Liverpool,
really good.
yeah. Joe Maddox is the front man, and they're with if you heard of This Feeling.
Uh-huh.
It's like a promotion company, so I think they're signed with This Feeling, and then they were like, "Can you do our photography?" So I started doing their photography, and then they booked a small tour of Sweden. They were gonna get me on that, and then lockdown came, and like literally everything for everyone, everyone, everything that everyone had tried to achieve, it literally just fell away overnight. A year into the lockdown, the magazine that I'd been shooting for folded. They didn't have any way for people to go out shooting anymore. I think they've been doing it for 13 years, and I think it's one of those industries where I think you're just constantly getting hit with stuff.
Yeah.
So I think after 13 years, and then like this lockdown comes, I think they just went, yeah, let's just call it a day.
I've just had enough.
Yeah. So that was sort of like how it led up. Yeah, there was a few things I wanted to add as well about the reason for the photography, because it was sort of mental health, the reason. So yeah, like kind of I was at have you heard of Akala?
Say that again.
Akala, Akala. The rapper.
Miss Dynamite.
Miss Dynamite's little brother, yeah.
Yeah.
I was at a show of his, and there was a girl in front of me taking photographs. She was in the pit, and it was around the same time as this other thing that I did the thing. And I remember saying to her, "How'd you get into this?" And she went, "Send me a message." So I sent her a message because I'm quite an introverted person, although socially, like you're on my social media, and I don't know how much you see, but socially, it looks like I'm a really outgoing, loud, outspoken, extroverted person. But so much of that's a performance.
Right.
On a real, genuine, deeper level, I like to spend a lot of time on my own. I like to ponder, and I like the quiet things. Do you know what I mean? So it was like when I've asked her this, what I was looking at when she was doing it was like it looked to me like she was just in a bubble, and no one could touch her, and she's just there doing these photographs, and I was like, how amazing would that be? Bands that you pay to go and see, to take photographs of them, and just the idea of it was it was kind of very spellbound. It was magical. That's what it was. It was sort of like a magical idea. So obviously when I did get into it, and she spoke to me and told me who to get in touch with, read the magazine and stuff, it created that for me because of the severe mental health issues I'd had ongoing through the 10 years, the bipolar, the borderline personality, and the agoraphobia and the anxiety disorders. These were all disorders that I was heavily medicating myself through alcohol and drugs. Throughout the whole drug situation, there'd been heroin dependency. That was probably last 2010, 2011, and I was on Subutex and methadone for a year,
right,
separately to come off that. But then the main ones after that was cocaine and alcohol. I don't think it ever matters how much anyone takes. I think it's why you're taking it, and what becomes of you when you take it. And it got to that, and it was all that stuff that I was trying to heal. So what happened when I started doing the photography was it felt like a coat of armor in social situations. I had this camera in my hand, and 99% of the time in a venue, no one even sees you. I think people just, he's doing a job, leave him alone.
Yeah.
So it felt like I was just able to float around these venues in this bubble of this, like an invisible cloak, even maybe. I know it sounds quite childish, but I think we're all kids deep down, and it made me feel safe because I suffer from anxiety and stuff. So for those 2 years prior to the lockdown and being in venues, I basically stopped drinking and I stopped taking drugs. And for 2 years, I was in a bar or a club or a venue nearly every single night and didn't touch alcohol or drink once because I'd found a purpose.
That was going to be one of my questions later on as well, was obviously because I knew about your addictions, and that was going to be one of them. How do you cope in these situations? That's amazing.
It's very different now. I wouldn't say I was coping now. Right. So basically, leading up to that, I'd been doing, I'd been to rehab several times. I'd been in hospital psych ward several times throughout the last 20 years. And through those 2 years, it was the first time, it was the longest I'd maintained sobriety without going to Alcoholics Anonymous or anything. It was photography, and it taught me that it was filling that hole, because addiction and alcoholism to me people trying to fill a void within inside themselves. You know, that's my own personal feelings of it, and it's an unfillable hole because it's a hole that was. We don't know why the hole's there because you know it's all this stuff from childhood. So to find you'll never fill it in with the. So you try and do all these things, and the photography was the first time that I found something that actually filled it. You know, and I was very happy. And as I said, it blew my mind that I was in venues and bars and pubs every night for 2 years and didn't drink, but it's because I was there with purpose.
Yeah.
You know, lockdown came and it absolutely annihilated me mentally, emotionally. You know, it probably undone 10 years of work that I'd done on myself. And I think anyone listening can actually relate to that. I don't think you have to be dealing with mental health issues to actually have experienced that through this lockdown. You know, there's so many people trained for years and years and years to do so many different things. And to just literally have it all stripped away, you know, because it wasn't just a lockdown, was it? It destroyed so much, you know. It destroyed my credit rating because I haven't been able to keep up with the bills, and the impact of that has impacted other stuff, equality of life, living on my own. It affected me ability to drive because I had to have medicals every so often to drive, but I couldn't have a medical because of the doctors. And it was, I don't know, like, how did you feel with the lockdown? For me, it felt like this was, although there was 7 billion people on the planet experiencing exactly the same thing, it felt like to me it was only me experiencing it. It felt like it was only my world falling apart. That's what it felt like.
Yeah, I mean, everyday experience it differently. I'm a postman, so there wasn't so much a lockdown for us. We just still to go out and do our work. But obviously, it takes an effect on other aspects of life. Obviously, the kids being off school, so you're having to all of a sudden you're a teacher and things like that. So,
but it's like stolen time as well, though, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's time you're never going to get back, is it?
Yeah, and it's still the same. It's still kind of going on.
Yeah.
Even like
course,
the isolation rules and things like that. My friend had to isolate for 10 days because he got it just at Christmas time, and then he's been out of isolation about a week and a half, and then his wee boys got it, and he's to isolate again. So, I mean, I think he's kind of in the same boat where he thinks it's never ending. So,
I think it's the fact that there's nothing able to plan, is there? Because we all live. I think we live for the experiences that we enjoy, don't we? Things to look forward to. You know.
I mean, that's how as well. Like I kind of in between, was it September-ish, kind of August, September, we started getting gigs back, and I must have been to like 9 or 10 gigs between then and Christmas, and then it's all went again. So like,
see, I kind of felt like I mentioned it to someone the other day. So I've got a friend who's got an events company in Liverpool called Evol, which put on some of the biggest major shows. Anything major that goes on, they're doing a lot of the major shows, like the Charlatans was, I think, was the last one, or no, sorry, it was what's his name, Jarvis Cocker.
Right.
So I was talking to the guy who has that, Revo, and this kid's done, you know, basically Revo started off working for O2, you know, the venue, and started, you know, over 13 years building his own events company, and what he's done for like the underground scene in the city is, I don't think you could ever thank him enough, do you know what I mean, for what he's been able to do. So I was talking to him about it the other week, and I was mentioning, like, when all the shows came back, all that stuff that, you know, as I said, I was doing all that stuff and it was helping me mental health. When all the stuff came back, it didn't. And I started drinking again. So I got to a stage where I couldn't even do a show without drinking. And he was like, well, why is that? And I said, because it didn't feel like we got anything back. It just felt like it's all going to go in the blink of an eye. We haven't got it. It's not here again. This is just.
Yeah.
So trying to, do you know what I mean? So trying to like.
That's why people were trying to fit in so many shows, because we weren't sure when it was going to take away again. So I can understand that.
What did I have the other week? Wolf Alice.
Mm-hmm.
So Wolf Alice were meant to play Liverpool the other week, and I think this week. And I messaged them, and they said back straight away. So we've had to cancel, and they didn't say the reason why they cancelled, but it's pretty apparent from what I've been experiencing. And it's just how the infrastructure works with the whole music thing. It's not cost effective. You know, if one person in a band of 8 people cancels, and they're on tour, and they're a pretty major local, UK band, people think that these bands that are touring the UK, like these up and comings like Wolf Alice and things, and they haven't got vast pots of money. There's not a vast. Do you know what I mean? A lot of bands don't even break even.
The same thing.
And then you've got a crew of 20 people.
Yeah,
it's destroying the industry. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it happened with the Snuts the other week as well.
Yeah, the Snuts, mate. I'm glad you mentioned them. What's the last song called? The last song you released?
Glasgow.
No, the last song.
They done Burn the Empire. That just came out just in November.
It was before that. Go on, what were you saying anyway? I'll find the song.
Well, that happened with them as well. Just the other week, they had rescheduled dates for August, September time, and then they announced last week or the week before that they had to cancel them. But just what you're saying, because if one of them or one of the touring party gets corona, then the full tour's off, and
those kids have got no money.
The venues still need to. The venues, they can't book these bands if they're not going to play things like that. So, but the hard time for that is that the fans don't understand it, and then the bands end up taking so much abuse online, and it's not their fault. They're having to protect their own lives as well and their own lives.
I do though, and I don't know if it's because I work in the industry. Like, I can understand why fans can and do get upset and that, and I think because like people who don't work in the industry do look at that and think, if you've got 500,000 streams on Spotify and you're touring the country, you must be loaded, and they don't get that, like, because of how the industry works now. Some of these kids are earning less than someone working a 9-to-5 job. Although they're managing to live their dream at the moment. Elbow were a classic band for it. I think it took them 10 years to cut even.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I
mean? Because the money now is made. Most of the money is made on live shows.
Merchandise and stuff.
There's hardly any money made for selling albums, because it all goes on Spotify and people stream it and they get.
Spotify is amazing for building an audience, but it's terrible for paying your artists. There's been massive artists like Madonna and people like that actually like show what their streaming revenue is, and it's absolutely pennies for. But it's like this whole thing of the child abuse system and the care system. It's like Spotify's become this system again. It's like, how do we break it? Because in loads of ways it works really well.
Yeah.
And in other ways it's so going back to gigs was hard. So what basically happened was the magazine I was shooting for completely folded during lockdown. And it was heartbreaking for me because like before lockdown, I think before lockdown I'd been booked to do Paul Weller, Bob Geldof, Boomtown Rats, Beverly Knight, Red Room Club. It's funny your mind goes blank, doesn't it, when you're doing this stuff? Kano, Cortinas.
Right.
And literally in the blink of an eye,
It's gone. Yeah.
yeah, you know. So it was like, I think I had $3,000 left in the bank, and I was sat there, and I was like, how do how do photographers get into music venues? Google. Most photographers get into music venues by being with a publication. So I said, use your $3,000 and make a publication. And I'm like, it was an amazing idea at the time. So I was like, yeah, okay, I'll to do this. Unfortunately, just because Liverpool is such a small city, it's so small. It's very like a village.
Uh-huh.
And it's like a village that if you're a decent person and not a piece of crap to people, people really rally around you and really want to see people do well. So when you start putting things on social media saying, does anyone know anyone who can do this and who can do that? Most people do jump forward and offer the services. Because we seem to be a city of people who want to see people succeed, especially within the arts. So when I put that out there about wanting to create this magazine, a few people came forward, and I found an amazing web designer called Chris Cashin.
Right.
Now, the website probably would have something on what we managed to achieve. I think it cost about $20,000, and we done it for about 3 because he was doing favors. And the magazine's idea is because everything that I'd sort of been through as a photographer, because that's all I still am. I'm only doing this so I can shoot. But now I have to be an editor, and I have to be a writer, and I have to, do you know what I mean? And it's funny because in school, like, there's no way that I would ever have became a writer. No, not the worst thing you could ever choose. It's like, it's like asking you to go and work as your phobia, the thing you hate the most.
Yeah.
Go and do that, and now I've actually ended up doing it. So when we kind of set it up, it was kind of initially so we could keep me and a few other really talented photographers like Warren Miller, Jasmine Sinclair, and Kevin Barrett being able to access venues to do shows when shows came back. And then as the ideas grew, the idea sort of came about where I was aware, looking at my background and everything that me and you've spoken about tonight, was when I walk into a music venue to take photographs, why isn't there no like young black men? Why isn't there no young black girls? Why wasn't there any trans or gay or non-binary young people? Why wasn't there any white kids from extremely impoverished backgrounds in the fucking Adidas tracksuits and the Nike Air trainers taking photographs? And it wasn't because that these kids didn't exist. It was because I believed the platform and the ways into the industry are not being provided for kids from these backgrounds. So I came away from that was I wanted to build a platform where I could eventually become a CIC company, which we've just registered for now, is to start training young people from disenfranchised communities. So when I say disenfranchised, it covers a wide spectrum, and it covers a spectrum basically from anything from mental health to body dysmorphia to white impoverished kids to kids with ADHD to black impoverished kids to Asian kids to trans kids, ways into this industry to actually start building careers as writers, as photographers, with the training and with the, when we publish an article, they're credited in the articles. So when they want to go to Channel 5 or the Daily Telegraph or anything in 5 years' time, they've got evidential proof that they've been working as a journalist for the last 5 years. And that's sort of where we're, I haven't even released that information publicly.
So how is obviously, like, if you're saying that you're training them and putting them through all that stuff, have you got somebody helping you with the writing, training them for that?
Yeah, so basically the idea was I needed several directors involved. And one of the directors who's come on board is James McKinley, who is the CEO of Liverpool Live TV. And they're going to provide a lot of the training and a lot of the training support within this. It only happens when you get your funding sources, but you have to become a CIC to get your funding sources. There's several colleges who've expressed interest in putting young photographers through the magazine as well. And yeah, initially it was all pipe dream stuff, and this stuff hasn't really been made public. But we're at the stage now where as soon as we get the certificates through the post, it happens. And, you know, again, for me, like, this is like absolutely terrifying. Like, because I just meant to go out and take some photographs because I had anxiety. Do you know what I mean? But then there's that little thing keeps like kicking off inside me. Who's like that thing we mentioned before about, you know, being the underdog and seeing other underdogs and thinking, I don't know how you probably feel the same as me, but I don't think there's nothing more inspiring than seeing an underdog achieve something. Like, I think it's a big F off to the government and the powers that be.
Yeah,
so when I can get a kid,
they want to see you fail. So for that's your reasoning for I'm going to do my own hanging. I'm going to succeed.
So when I can get a 16-year-old kid, right, who's just been selling heroin on the street, and 6 months later, right, he's shooting Paul Weller in the Olympia. That to me is like F off to you guys. Watch what we can do as a city. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm terrified. But the only thing that keeps on getting me through
it must give you a buzz as well. Like, once you see
it is, because it's that thing, isn't it? It's that F off, but it's also again that you know, that human thing of feeling inadequate, not feeling good enough, knowing that there's a lot of people who will want to see you fail, and that there will be people out there who will try to do things to make you fail. But then I also believe deep down as well that if you keep on doing the right thing, I don't think there's anything anyone can do against, you know, if you try and do the right thing and you're transparent, I think that always succeeds in the end. You know, I'm only trying to change one life. You know, if I can help change one teenager's life, and you know, if you look at my story, you know, and if I can implement a fact where that a kid that came through what I went through does have someone there when they're 16 who could imagine if someone done this to me when I was 16, what I could have been by now. Do you know what I mean? And that's the motivation.
But you're saying you only want to change one life, but even if you did only change one life, and then that person goes and helps change somebody else's life, and then that knock-on effect, and that's
what it is. You only have to change one. You only have to change one. If you can stop another kid from trying to commit suicide, or, you know, to help another kid to be able to come out, and, you know, because if you look in these magazines and stuff, and I think this was another thing for me as well, it was like the trans community and the gay community and things have become communities that I'm extremely invested in as a human being, and I've been for about the last 10 years, and I think the identification always came from just being a young black man, because the similarities of how some people in society were perceiving us were extremely similar. Do you know what I mean? And this, and we're still at a stage where these people don't have voices, you know. And the reason so many kids stay in crime when they're already in crime is because of shame and guilt. Because I'm not going to step out of crime now when I've been doing it for years, because no one's going to give me a job. Everyone's going to laugh at me. Some of the newspapers might publish a story about what I used to do, and we need to stop. We need to stop giving that power.
Yeah. Well,
anyone
you end up living in fear of that, and you that does nothing for yourself. You just need.
I did 40 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You know, so it's terrifying.
So what's the plans then for the magazine? I mean, I've looked at it online. You get a wee kind of feature where you do like the 12 questions. I quite like that.
Yeah. I think it's been really, really hard. And I think it's been really hard because when I started, I've only done it so I could shoot shows. And it was the dream. And I think when I started off, I was like, I really did believe that everyone who worked at the magazine with me on the other one, I really believed they'd all come and help with this one. And not all of them did. And I believe there's a lot of reasons for that. But I don't think any of them were. I don't think any of them were malicious. I just think everyone wanted to go and do their own thing, and do you know what I mean? But I think the other thing as well was not being able to provide a source of income, because a lot of these magazines for a long time have existed by not paying writers and not paying photographers. It's very much industry standard. And the dream of our magazine through CIC and National Lottery funding is to be able to pay expenses and to be able to pay small fees for people to commission work, so people can feel valuable. And so we only really, during the lockdown, we only really focused on, there was only me and David Lancaster, and we just focused then on the most accessible thing was artists. So it was the 12 questions, the live reviews, and that's sort of all we've stopped there with that, although we have a page for opinions. So opinions are, someone wants to rant, someone wants to shout, someone wants to talk about these issues. Opinions is for those kind of things. We've got music reviews, album reviews, gig reviews. But I think all this stuff only really generates the amount of writers you need is when you can make someone feel valuable and valid.
Yeah.
And that's when I can give someone some money to say, here's the thing, right? Say we get a 17-year-old girl to go and shoot a gig in the middle of the city centre, yeah? Like, who in their right mind as a publisher would send that person to go and do a gig if they can't at least pay for them to get a taxi home at 2:00 in the morning? Right? And that's what we've been living with for the last 20 years of magazines. I'll probably get shot down for this. Magazines and promoters doing this as a thing is like, you should feel privileged that we're letting you come and review a gig for us. So no one's doing anything like that. No one's paying these kids any money. No one's giving them transport home. No one's giving them money so they can buy themselves a can of Coke and a cheeseburger. But then they'll have their photographs and their writing afterwards. Do you know what I mean? And it enrages me.
That's it I didn't realise. I mean, these bands are then getting the promotion and
for free,
reviews and things like that.
Free.
It's just asking.
But even when you look throughout the whole industry is, I don't want to say too much, but the whole industry is definitely there needs to be a big reshuffle of how we're appreciating our contributors, because I see, when I look at a band and I see a photographer or a writer, all these people are in the same, they're all doing the same thing. The band's exposure doesn't exist without the writer, without the photographer. Do you know what I mean? We're not, it's not that we're doing favors for people. We're on the same level, but I think in some areas of the industry, I think some people aren't being appreciated as much as they should be. And that, it's that thing again, isn't it? It's like, oh, but it must be so cool to go shoot the Libertines. It's like, well, it is, but it didn't buy me any food, did it?
No. So, I mean, it hits it on the head straight away. It hits the nail on the head right away when you look at it like that. People still need to put food on their table and things like that. Doesn't matter.
I didn't mean the Libertines then, though, because the Libertines do pay people, but it was just using it as an analogy. Do you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying, though?
Yeah, totally. So as we were saying, you get a full year ahead of you now to kind of hopefully gigs are coming back, and you can really kind of take the magazine forward this year with the funding and stuff like that. Obviously, for the listeners, just tell them the name of your magazine and where they can find it.
So, like, the magazine's called New Sound Generation. It can be found on the internet. We have a website at www.newsoundgeneration.uk. But it's on all social media platforms as well. So it's on Facebook, on Instagram, on Spotify. We have a playlist on Spotify, Twitter. And I think that's all at nsgmagazinelive.uk. But, we're starting to spread. So we have got a writer in Glasgow. We've got 2 photographers in Glasgow. We've got a few in Manchester and that. So if there are local bands and there are people who want to get in touch, go on the social media pages and send us an email. Our emails on all of them. Because the magazine's not about... Everyone wants to shoot a headliner, yeah? But how does a headliner become a headliner? Exactly. You start off somewhere, and we want to be part of that journey. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So... if any bands want to just send us some music and get in touch or for an interview or anything, just give us a shout and we're well up for it, man.
I'll post all your links in the description for people. They can.
I'll send you them so you've got them, like, do you know what I mean? But so before we even go, just the quickest success story that we've got is a girl called Elodie Hatfield, where she's just interviewed Zuzu, and Zuzu's quite a big national artist at the moment. And I found Elodie when I was shooting Youngblood at Liverpool Montford Hall. And she was there taking photographs. I'm like, how are you here? She was like, I've just fluked my way in. I was like, do you want to shoot for a magazine? She was like, yeah, really? And she didn't get in touch for 3 weeks. And then she did. And now she's shot Zuzu. Now she's interviewed Zuzu. Now, Elodie was 17 when she came to us. She's just turned 18 a few days ago. And she's just got to shoot a major UK national artist. So these are our people that we want to be aspiring to, So Elodie's sort of our little success story at the moment.
Yeah, that's a brilliant story. Just before we go into the last bit of your heroes, just another wee story. Another wee story. It was your birthday this week, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I seen you posted on Facebook. You got a message for another photographer.
Yeah, that was pretty nuts, mate. That was pretty nuts.
Yeah, you have to tell us about that. That was a cracking little story.
I've got to Google his bloody name, right? So, there was a guy. Well, there's a woman that I follow who's a friend in Liverpool. Now, this friend ended up marrying a guy in Nashville who's a music producer. He ended up winning a Grammy for his music production. So through that, I ended up Facebook friends with this older guy who basically, I think it was the night, I don't know how much time he spent with John Lennon. So basically over the last few months of John Lennon's life, he took some of the most iconic pictures of John Lennon. And we're talking about, the ones in Central Park, literally, the ones within the few days before he actually died. And we've never really spoke. He's just been on my Facebook, on my social media, but if you go through I will send you his personal link so you can check out his stuff, right?
Yeah.
But if you go through his photographs and stuff, right, it's got like Patti Page, it's got like, he's shot Jimi Hendrix, it's like the Doors, like, he's an old man. I think he's like, it's horrible to say that, isn't it, old man? So he's in his 80s, do you know what I mean? So he's done all this stuff, he posted something the other day, it was photos of him at Ground Zero, 9/11, actually when it's happening, and it's someone else's photos of him. That's how prolific he was as a photographer. He's doing all the music stuff, but he's on the ground every day. So he's been throughout the industry, and I got a lot of birthday likes on my Facebook. And I do feel like it's mad that people, you know what I mean? I think Facebook's an amazing tool, but he just popped up and he was like, "Hi Billy, happy birthday." And I was like, "Are you fucking kidding me? How do you even know I exist?" Do you know what I mean? So I sent him a message and said, "Thank you for the birthday thing." And he says, "No, I just wanted to say hello because I think your photography is great." And that's all he said. And it was just like, it's impossible for something like that to happen because all I ever picked up a camera for was to make myself feel a bit better, and now it's at that stage. And I'll tell you some of the weird synchronicities of this quickly. I live on a street called Catherine Street in Liverpool's Georgian Quarter,
Uh-huh.
Called the Georgian because it was all Georgian houses. The next street to me, Percy Street, John Lennon shared a flat with Stuart Sutcliffe from the Beatles while he was going to the art college. The next street is Gambier Terrace, which is famous number 4, flat 3 Gambier Terrace where he went to. Across the road there's the art college that he went to. 200 yards that way is Brian Epstein's flat where John Lennon wrote Love, Love Me Do. And then the guy who takes John Lennon's pictures. So I live on top of it all, do you know what I mean?
I think it's a brilliant wee story. I'm glad it kind of came up this week just before I had you in, man, because it was a nice wee.
Do you know what I think? What it is, what's weird about it though, is it does that thing to you where like it brings everyone really down to a human level. You know that we're all really human. We're all so connected. It's like he should be someone who's not just getting in touch with a kid around the corner who's taking photographs, but he became human.
Yeah.
And just went out and this kid a birthday message. And I think that's what the beauty of the story is how we can all become human if we step out of ourselves a little bit, drop the ego, and just try and do nice things, man.
Yeah, it doesn't take long to go and wish somebody a happy birthday, but you realise kind of the effect it can have on that person.
Do you know what I mean? I think like you're probably a bit like me though as well, where I think I struggle when I don't see people doing that stuff for strangers. I struggle where, you know, when like someone will just walk past someone on the street begging or something and be like, why are you just giving 2 seconds to say hello, what's your name?
Yeah, you know, that's because I prefer to have a conversation and buy somebody a meal or something like that.
Yeah.
But the
I think what you're like, you go on.
The thing with as you do that and then you walk 10 yards and there's another one, and then you feel bad that you can't do it.
Yeah, definitely. That's another thing. Is that how do we? I think that's sort of also an aspect of my own self as well. Of I tried sometimes you have to bring yourself back down and look and go. I'm always screaming about the change and the differences that need to be made, but then sometimes I'm not even part of that change either, and maybe I should be doing more. And do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because all these problems are solvable if we were all doing something about it.
But that's the thing. It's all well and good that the grassroots see it, but it's the people higher up that don't want it to change.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
I do find a lot of fear in the general public, though. I think it's all the stuff we spoke about again. I think people are conditioned to be afraid of certain people. And
so, last bit of the podcast, 4 heroes to come for dinner, and what you would cook them, depending on how good a cook you are.
Do you know what? Right? Do you know what's mad? It's in the magazine. I ask artists this question. You know, yeah, it's 3 questions with us. We're like 3 questions. So who would I invite and why? Go on. Who would I invite? Why and what I'd cook them?
Yeah.
So I had to write these down to make sure. Right, John Lennon.
Perfect.
Just because I had an argument between would it be John Lennon or Freddie Mercury, and it was John Lennon because I think I've got Freddie Mercury pretty much figured out. Where like John Lennon still baffles me. Like he would be a messed up kid to have a conversation with. Like that would get deep that with him.
Yeah.
So John Lennon. I think I'd cook them all the same thing. I'll say that at the end. So John Lennon. The second one would be Jesus. Just because like there's no, you know what I mean? You got to have Jesus to dinner, haven't you? Do you know what I mean? You know, just to find out a few things. Yeah, and I'd want to see what color he is. I want to see if he's white, like he's been painted, or I want to see if he's actually like Arabic and mixed race or darker skin. Because we've got phones now, we can take photos, can't we? So be like, nah, look, Jesus looks like that. Third one is Oscar Wilde. he's been my hero for a long time. He's been my hero for about 20 odd years. Like to the degree where during lockdown, all my savings, which I'd saved to buy a car, is I went on an Oscar Wilde Paris hunt. So I went to Paris just after lockdown.
Right.
And I went to his grave. I went to the hotel where he died. I went to several restaurants where he had food and dined and stuff. And that's been a dream of mine for like 20 years. I think just for his story to me is just a magical one. I think it's, there's a lot of, similarities, I think, in a lot of us.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last one's Mac Miller, who was, I don't want to drop her name first, but the only way for people to know who it is so he was Aria Grande's boyfriend.
Right.
But he shouldn't be known as Aria Grande's boyfriend because on his own, he's prolific on his own. You go onto his Spotify, I think he's got like 30 million followers. But he was an American rapper from Pittsburgh. And his rap style, and he's just a genius. It's just completely, it wasn't kind of like, your gangster rap, and that is very insightful and thoughtful rap about human nature and human life and your fallibilities as a human being. And sadly, in 2018, he been on a cocaine bender with his mates. He was only 26, took some pills to get to sleep that night and died of a fentanyl overdose. They'd been, which weren't meant to be in the pills.
Right.
So, but him again, he's one of those people who's very, his star shone brighter than most stars, do you know what I mean? Burnt out too quick. So that's me 4, and I'd probably cook them. I'd have to cook them scouse, wouldn't I? It'd be scouse. Right. It'd be a pan of scouse, yeah, of course.
What is scouse? I've never
scouse. So scouse is like a famous Liverpool dish. It's the only dish we've got. It's on Nash. So you've got haggis, haven't you?
Yeah, we've that tonight.
Right, I've never had haggis. I'm dying to though. So scouse it's just a hot pot of basically beef, carrots, potatoes, gravy, usually onions. But scouse is different for everyone in Liverpool. So everyone's nan makes scouse differently. Right. So you go to some house as well, there'll be peas in it, there'll be sweet corn in it, and so it's sort of that. But it came from Scandinavian sailors in about the 1800s. It's the first mention in a history book of scouse, and it was called lobscouse. And it was a stew that the Scandinavians, because we were like the third biggest port in the world at the time. So the Scandinavian sailors, when they were coming here, they used to come with this stew, and we get lobscouse, and we called it scouse. And you've got blind scouse as well, which doesn't have meat in it, but scouse is like the national dish of Liverpool. Like,
right. It kind of sounds a bit like maybe like mince and tatties or something up here.
What's that?
Mince and tatties, mince and potatoes. That's what we do.
Mince and potato.
Yeah,
I think like scouse is more like it's like your chunks of beef. Do you know what I mean? Or like braised steak or something,
right?
Or lamb or something. Do you know what I mean? It's definitely like a stew, like.
That sounds good. That sounds good. I might.
Never had it. No, you never had it.
No. No, I've never been.
I'm going to send you a scouse recipe. I'll send you a recipe.
Yeah, you do that, and I'll make it for my missus. So thanks for coming on, and
no problems, man.
Thanks for picking your heroes, man. They were class, man. A good group of people to sit and have scouse with. Yeah, and as I say, I'll post all your links in the description. I hope you all enjoyed this episode of Time for Heroes podcast. If you would like to get in touch, the best way is on the Facebook page, Time for Heroes podcast, or on Instagram at Time for Heroes podcast, or Twitter at Time for Heroes P1.
or drop me an email at timeforheroespod@gmail.com. You'll find Time for Heroes on all podcast platforms, including Spotify, Apple, Google and Amazon. Please leave a review where you can, share with others, and more importantly, enjoy.